So it has actually been a few months since the last generation iPhone SE has actually came out. So let's go and see how the iPhone SE 2022 model, aka the iPhone SE 3, has been holding up a few months later. Now this device, I will definitely tell you, has been extremely perplexing. So much so, in fact, I think Apple's kind of getting onto the trend of like, maybe this, using the super old design in a, newer internal body may not be the best form, for people to go ahead and purchase these types of phones. The iPhone SE 2 sold pretty well, compared to a lot of other devices. And now the iPhone SE 3, since its release, we've gotten sales numbers or expected sales numbers. We've gotten some phones going down in the used market, and nobody's been super excited about this phone as far as I can tell. Almost every single person that I've known, almost every single reviewer, almost every single person on Twitter, they haven't really been talking about this phone at all, which goes to say that the hype behind this phone as of right now, there is pretty much no hype. Even with the next generation iPhone SE, people want a good, cheap phone. They don't want a phone that is cheap, that is not a good value. And this iPhone is a cheap iPhone, and it's not a good iPhone for that price tag. At $429, you might as well spend a little bit more money and just go and buy an iPhone 11. You can even buy an iPhone 12 right now for probably around that same price. Like if you have like $450, you can probably buy an iPhone 12. So why not just go and buy that phone? It's just a way better deal in every single area. The outside of this phone though is still something that is not holding up. And the way I see it is you're already buying a phone that already has an outdated body. That is not the same thing as buying like an iPhone 13 right now that we know is going to remove the notch and all these other things, because that design is still fairly current. The difference between an iPhone, SE 3 and an iPhone 13, there is a massive difference in terms of the bodies. But the difference between an iPhone 13 and an iPhone 14, as far as we can tell, even a 14 Pro, there's not really going to be those many crazy differences here. So I say this time and time again, this is a big thing to keep in mind. If you're planning on buying a phone and you want to keep it for as long as possible, even if you like Touch ID, I still think it's worth going up to an iPhone 12 or iPhone 11, just because you are getting a way more current design with a way better camera setup, way better battery life in many different ways too. And that's kind of the main thing to keep in mind. Another thing is with the camera, it's one thing for Apple to bring better internals and this and that, but it's another thing for them to keep pretty much the same exact camera that they had before. I feel like this specific camera is not that great. It's not bad, but I still think Apple could have done a way better job had they just implemented something maybe like a dual camera setup on this phone, or even if they brought an iPhone XR body to this type of device, I'm sure you could have probably brought over a little bit of a better camera with that bigger body as well. So it really just depends on how you look at it, but the camera is another thing I wasn't really happy about. But the one thing, not in a complaining form factor, is with its, internals. With that Apple A15 Bionic chip inside with 4 gigabytes of RAM, that is a massive reason why this phone is still holding up. And in my opinion, probably for the next few years, this phone, if Apple's still selling it or they're going to stop selling whatever they're going to do, as I said before, I think the chipset this thing had inside is one of its biggest advantages. Even though I don't really like this phone as a whole, I like this thing for having the latest chipset. Once the A16 comes out, or even when the next phones come out, it's looking like Apple is still going to be putting the A15 and still kind of supporting it here and there. So even probably for the next few years, you're still going to be getting a phone that has a fairly newer chipset. It may not be the latest and greatest, but it's still going to be a phone that's going to be supported for quite a bit of time. And I think that's probably one thing to keep in mind as well. So I think when it comes down to it, this type of phone as of right now, it's a good phone if you can find it for a very cheap price tag. Like if you can buy this thing for $200 or something, then I would recommend buying it, but it's not a good phone for the price. $429 still is just way too much. I haven't really seen too many people purchasing this phone. Like I said before, I think there's many other cheaper phones you can buy in the used market that will rival this thing like crazy, and I still don't see a reason to buy it. I think there are a lot of other phones you can buy that, will give you a better experience than this thing, and that's kind of how I'd sum it up. Still a few months later, it still hasn't really been holding up that well in my opinion. So that kind of covers it up. If you have any other thoughts or questions, please let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.